partial government shutdown, I want to bring in a Democratic Congressman, Anthony Brown from Maryland. So the strategy for Democrats trying to put pressure on Republicans, it seems to try to say, hey, let's deal with the controversial bit of this, Homeland Security funding. But the expectation is that's not going to be taken up by the Senate. So why do this?
Well, first of all, I mean, our package has two components. One is just sending back to the Senate what they've already approved, right? Bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats approve funding.
For a number of agencies, funding for a number of agencies.
Exactly. And then what we're suggesting is we have a controversial issue around the president's border wall, which we reject. Let's isolate that issue. Let's move it to February 8th, give us some breathing room so we can open up the rest of government. That seems reasonable to do. And what I'm expecting to see, if and when we talk about a border wall, which I oppose, we need to be talking about broader comprehensive immigration reform, pathways to citizenship, dreamers.
Doesn't that just make it even more difficult when you're adding hot button issues to what's already, I mean, you guys are in a shutdown over just funding. Then you throw in something like dreamers, you throw in other issues of comprehensive immigration reform. Isn't it maybe biting off a little more than you can chew?
Well, it makes it more difficult if you try to get it done by January 3rd. It's even more difficult.
You think you can get it done by February?
Can't get it done by
February.
February 8th is a tough one as well. Remember, the last time that Congress underwent comprehensive immigration reform was 22 years ago. But
well, that's my point.
Overdue.
It's been decades, and you think that this is somehow going to be major movement in the course of a month? Is that realistic?
Well, we're not going to move on border wall unless it's a part of a comprehensive immigration reform. So an alternative would be to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security through the end of this calendar year. At some point, though, if we're talking about border security, you have to talk about pathways to citizenship, reunification, the lottery program. You have to talk about how our immigration system strengthens our workforce. All of these are part of immigration reform. None of them is what the president is talking about. He just wants the wall.
I think, you know, here in Washington, we look at this showdown and we start talking about who's winning, who's losing, politically speaking, right? Is it Democrats? Is it the president? How are congressional Republicans faring? But this is about to get real for hundreds of thousands of Americans, right? And not just the ones who are federal employees, but you have people who are contracting, who get money, who are not going to get back pay. The IRS will soon have to delay filings. The Coast Guard will curtail some duties like enforcing certain laws. I mean, these are serious things. At what point do Democrats blink? Do they make a calculation that, okay, if the president is not going to stick up for people who are suffering here, then we're going to do that?
Brianna, I've got the 5th largest number of federal government employees in my congressional district. I just spent the last 10 days in barbershops.
What are they saying
They're saying we don't want the wall. They want to be back.
They're saying we'll hang out and get unpaid.
No, what they're saying is they want to be on the job, they want to get paid, and they don't want the wall. And they recognize.
So which is it? So which is more important to them?
Both. They're saying open up government, it's an unrelated issue, and then go ahead and debate border security in the larger context of comprehensive immigration.
So you think they forgive Democrats if they're not on the job, but
I don't know if it's about
wall?
forgiving Democrats. I think it's about focusing squarely where the blame resides, and that's President Trump, who 10 days ago took ownership for the shutdown. He said he'd be proud to have a shutdown, and voters won't forget that. And certainly the residents in my congressional district, again, 5th largest number of federal government employees, they want to be on the job. They really do. Many of them are working without pay. It's created a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability, and angst during the holidays.
Sure, but the president is talking to a constituency that it appears is more interested in the wall than it is in keeping the government running. How do you come up against that and win?
Look, it's hard, and I'll tell you why.
How do you get both things if you're dealing with someone who one thing over the other is more important to him?
Look, this president has been engaged in divisive politics since day one. He views federal government employees as Democrats. He doesn't hold Democrats in high regard. That's why the president took away their pay raise for 2019. He's made it easier to fire federal government employees. My concern is that he may not even support legislation that retroactively pays federal government employees. This is a president who is really beat up on federal government employees, and the losers are not just the employees, but Americans who rely on those services. Do you really think that's going to happen?
That if there's bipartisan support in Congress, as there has been in the past, to do back pay for federal employees who have been furloughed or working without pay, you really think that the president would not give them that pay?
Well, we're certainly going to include it in our package, and that's what the Senate would
I
we'd
ask
expect to
because
pass.
if I'm a federal employee and I hear that, I'm really freaked out, and
Well,
I wonder if is that the point, or do you have substantive reason to believe the president will void that back?
To use your language, federal government employees are already freaked out with this president. Really, I mean, there was an automatic pay raise that was going into effect for 2019. The president
froze it.
He froze it.
But do you have
Called
reason to believe that he
national
will
emergency.
not honor the back pay? Do you have specific reason? Something he has said? Something someone has told you that you? Okay.
No, I don't. But
You're
what
just
I do
fearful
is
of that.
Yes,
okay.
his past actions denying a pay raise, making it easier to fire them. He was taken to court. Fortunately, lost. The federal judge said no. Some of those executive orders that are beating up on federal government employees are unlawful. But this is a president who is beat up on federal government employees. So I think we should always be approaching him with caution when it comes to federal government employees.
Congressman Anthony Brown, thank you so much. It's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to have you in studio, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you,
All right,
Brianna.
coming up, there is plenty on the Trump agenda in 2019 as we set a shutdown, a divided government, and the economy. Will it stay strong this year? Some are fearing the R word. We're going to have more on that and other hot topics in Washington this new year.